Hello, and welcome back to my knitting podcast. I get to say welcome back because this is episode 2, and thank you to everyone who watched the first episode. I was really blown away by the reception. I had hoped for 50 views. I have no social media no social media following. And looking at other podcasters, I thought if I got 50 views, that would be a pretty respectable number. And as of now, my first podcast is at 3,400 views, which is overwhelming to think about, but really, really flattering. So here I am with episode 2. Welcome back to those of you who saw the first one. Welcome if you're new here. I'm Millie. I am a stay-at-home mom. I'm also an author. I have 2 published books, and I live in North Carolina in the United States. And just a little geography, because YouTube tells me the demographics of the viewers, and I have a lot of European viewers. So if North Carolina is on the east coast of the US, mid-Atlantic, kind of near Washington, D.C., I tried Googling sister climate cities to give you like a reference, and Google told me that nowhere in Europe really gets as humid as we get here in North Carolina, which is wild to me because we just moved here from Florida. So this feels like sweater weather as we get snow here. But we're gonna try. Bear with me. I've got my kids. So if I want to do this during daylight hours, we're going to work on with the noise. So let's just jump right into it. This with what I'm wearing. This is the Eon Sweater by November Knits. It is a top-down raglan style sweater with a folded neckline and split sides. I'll post a picture. I don't really want to do like a candid modeling session for 3,400 people. So I'll post some pictures of this split. It worked out really well, the pattern. The pattern calls for DK held with mohair yarn, which is worsted weight. I ended up using Ecolana by We Are Knitters, which is an Aran weight. So I went up a needle size and knit a slightly smaller size. I'm a 43-inch bust. So I knit the 5th size, but up a needle size. Ended up with a 54-inch circumference on the sweater. So it fits me really well. I used Ecolana by We Are Knitters, which is a single ply, and that worked out really well too. It's a little scratchy, not too bad. I'm wearing it with, no tank top underneath it right now. I did knit. So if the designer is the person in the pictures, I followed the dimensions she recommended. And if the designer is a model, I see why it wasn't long enough. I'm 5'7". And so I did knit the entire front panel, and then I ripped back to where her dimensions had said to split, made it the top of my bra line. And I should have known. I tried it on as I was going. I should have known, but I just didn't want to rip back. And so I waited, of course, until I was casting off the hem. And so I ripped back. I think I added 10 centimeters before the split. It was 8 or 12. So let's just guess at 10. And now it's perfect because now it sits with the split towards the bottom of my rib cage. And that's what I wanted. And that gives me the lovely little breeze that I had hoped for, because I wanted something more lightweight, but with a sweater look. And this is perfect. I've worn it out, and I've taken it off, squished it into a tiny ball, and it wasn't as heavy as a sweatshirt. Because usually when I go out, I have the diaper bag and I'm carrying kids, I'm carrying the stroller. So I just can't take a sweatshirt around with me, but this works out well. I was worried, very worried about, I thought this was, see, it's got this, flashing you. It's got this 2x2 rib for the bottom half of the front panel. And before blocking, I was very, very worried that that was going to mean a cinched in waist, and that was going to look horrible on my body type. But it didn't, it blocked out just fine. I did do an Italian bind off, so it stretches. So I don't know, I would recommend doing a stretchy bind off on all sweater bottoms, but especially something like this. The last time I did complain about the short row shaping, this is a me problem. You see all the holes here on the shoulder short row shaping? That's a me problem. I stalked the Instagram hashtag and looked at the Ravelry pages, and from what I could tell, no one else had this problem. And I've been knitting for 20-ish years, and so a lot of basic things are muscle memory for me at this point. And I think I'm doing this wrong. So I'm gonna watch some tutorials because this is ridiculous. And it's so weird that I am the only, it's my fault. I know it is. You see it right there. Let's stretch it out a little too. That's my fault. So I've got to figure out how to do that better. So don't, if you watched last episode and you were holding that against this pattern, I don't hold that against this pattern. Another thing I wanted to point out was, I also noticed on Instagram that the designer had a 40% off sale. She put it, I think she posted it and put it in stories, and then I shared it in my stories. So if you're somebody who doesn't like to pay for patterns or can't pay for patterns, patterns are kind of expensive. Go ahead and follow the designer November Knits on Instagram, because you may stumble across a 40% off pattern. And I paid full price, and I think it was worth full price, but your budget might be different. So follow Instagram. This was a really great, easy, quick, even with the ripping out the front panel, it was a great, easy, quick pattern. I wore it, I've worn it several times now, and I need to, yeah, you can kind of see, but I really wanted to get this video made, so I didn't want to take the time to wash it again. I wore it, the first time I wore it to a art show that my daughter had it. She's only 4. I have 2 kids. One's 1, one's 4. And my daughter goes to a little play school, and they had an art show, and I don't know anyone. So I wore this sweater, and nobody cares what you wear, but I find, for me personally, and I think for other people too, it's easier to have a talking point. And so if you compliment somebody's clothes, you can break the ice and you know, make friends that way. And so somebody complimented my sweater. I was immediately able to be like, oh, I made it. And then I had a reason to talk to the cliquey PTA moms all night. And I think I made some friends, and that made me feel good. So I am really happy about the sweater. When I stretch it out like that, it makes the sleeve to the armpit is actually not that far away, in case you're worried about the way I made the sleeves a little too long. That was my choice. I think I went over by like 15 centimeters compared to what the designer, oh, we're starting to get some pilling. You can't see it. It's not that bad. I made the sleeves longer than the designer recommended, and I don't mind. It adds to the sweatshirt look that I was going for. So moving on to the next project I have, this is actually a cowl pattern. It is the Gender Unicorn of the Sea cowl. I turned it into a top for my daughter because she's 4, she's learning the alphabet, and is for narwhal. And I wanted to make her a narwhal top. If you don't want to turn a cowl into a top, the designer just like a week ago put out a test call for a sweater version of the cowl pattern. So the designer is Tide Pool Knits. They're on Instagram. Go ahead and follow them, because then you'll know. Oh God, how bad is that? have a little monitor over here so I can see what they're doing. But if we're gonna get this video out, you're gonna have to tolerate some background noise. I hope it works out. Gender Unicorn of the Sea by Tide Pool Knits. I turned the cowl into a top. The cowl is a tube, and then when I wanted, which, you know, your body is also a tube. So when I wanted to split for sleeves, you know, bottom up. And so when I wanted to split for the armpit, I split the front and the back. I did not do color work on the back because I don't want to do color work on the back and no one cares. I did do the color work on the front. Flat is what I mean. So I had to start doing the color work flat. So I didn't do it on the back panel. Then I did a 3 needle bind. This is messy. The 3 needle bind off for the neckline, but I didn't go far enough. So then I had to go back and sew it. You can see the knot there. That's the 3 needle bind off. Then where I had to sew it up a little bit more. And then I just stuck on some ribbed sleeve cuff. So it worked out well. The pattern itself called for, or is a 22-inch circumference cowl. My daughter is a 21-inch bust. So I went into it knowing I was going to add something. I went into it knowing, but if you look at the pattern, it has these perfect little columns, and the designer actually has a whole section about how to make the cowl wider, if that's what you want. You see the columns? So she has pages to explain. I think that, anyway, I don't want to explain how to add, and each of these columns is 1 inch. So I did a few extra, and this is what my chart, this is how I do my color work. I print out the chart and then mark through it with permanent marker every time I get through a line, which was a mistake because my daughter got a hold of the permanent marker, and she's into tattoos right now, and she gave herself a little face tattoo, which is, it's fine. You know, I have a tattoo. I'm not against tattoos, but we are not doing face tattoos on my children at this point in their lives. So no more permanent marker for me on knitting patterns, but the top worked out great. I can show you the floats if you're interested. I think I knit this up in like a few days. There's the floats. You can see the narwhals. It is knit with worsted weight yarn. I used cotton yarn for color work, I know. The white I know is Knit Picks Comfy. The pink is, I don't know. It's something from a big box store that I had in stash. I let my daughter pick the color. But I can say that it was less than 1 ball of Comfy, and it would have taken less than 2 of Comfy in a different color. These are 50-gram balls. Knit Picks Comfy is $4.49, which means that this top, if you wanted to buy it and turn the cowl into a top, would cost you about $13.50. And it was a great little gift knit for my daughter, and she likes it. And if you're interested in a sweater version, which you could just cap the sleeves, make it a tee. The designer on Instagram is Tide Pool Knits, and I would assume that they will be coming out with their design as soon as the testing is done. So moving on to the third finished object is another gift knit-ish. I made this, it's the Bellacor by Andrea Mowry. Here's my version. I made this for my mother, but she doesn't like it, so I don't know what I'm gonna do with it. It looks great. Look at the, if you had like a skein of indie dyed yarn for the contrast color, I bet that would really show it off really nicely. Maybe I'll finally buy some indie yarn. Anyway, so some life happened, and my mom stepped up to pay for my daughter's school. She she's in pre-K3 this year, so it's not, school in my state doesn't start till, public school doesn't start till kindergarten, so it's not like she has to go to school. It's a play school. It's only 3 hours, but my mom decided to pay for it, and so I decided to make her a gift knit to say thank you. I didn't ask her input at all. And she showed up in like August or September for a visit, and I was like, hey, I made you this, and she did not like it, which is so weird because Andrea Mowry is totally my mom's style. Plus it's pretty neutral. So I don't know what I'm going to do with it. So I hadn't done the sleeves when I showed it to her, and I told her about how to block out, and it didn't actually change that much with blocking. The drape changed wonderfully, but in terms of like a non-knitter looking at it, like the style didn't change. So I don't know what I'm gonna do with it. I hadn't done the sleeves when I showed it to her, so I shoved it in a project bag and shoved it on a shelf, and it sat there until a couple weeks ago, and I was like, oh, I should finish that up for my next knitting podcast because it needs to get out of my way. So I added the sleeves, and here we are talking about the Bellacor by Andrea Mowry. I used Knit Picks gloss for the black, and the contrast color is also Knit Picks. It is Hawthorne Tonal in Silverton, which I got off Amazon. Knit Picks is on Amazon if you want just like one skein and you want it prime delivered. It's a tube, you knit up, split for the front and the back, then do a ribbing and a bind off, and add sleeves. And it was a pretty easy project. I don't have any notes on it because I knit it a year ago. I measured it, and it's 44 inches, which is the size 2, so I must have gotten gauge. There's no neck shaping. I will, my mom's not, she'll wear it so I can post pictures in a few weeks when she visits. So we'll see what the neck shaping looks like, but based on all the other people who have done it, I don't think that the lack of neck shaping is going to be an issue. The price on this is $39.56. And if you're new here, I like to talk about the cost of my knits because I'm a little bit plus size, depending on who you ask. And I think we don't, the knitting community doesn't talk about the cost of plus size knitting, and obviously the size 2, which is one of the reasons I wanted to knit for my mom. Was it's so much easier and faster to knit for small sizes than for my size. But I guess that's not really going to be something that I do in my life. I don't know what she's going to do with it if she doesn't like it. I guess I could not give it to her, but then who do I give it to? And to further talk about gift knitting, I sent one of my finished objects from the last video, my night book by Unwind Knitwear. I sent that to my grandma because I'm a pretty fast knitter, and I sent a message to my family. I sent like an open call. Hey, I'm doing this podcast and I can knit faster than I can afford yarn. So if you guys want anything, just send the yarn and I'll knit it for you. And my grandma just wanted the night book, so I sent it to her. And my grandma and I are pretty close. She's 84. She was the matron of honor at my wedding, and we didn't have a whole bridal party, so it was just her. And she doesn't live in a nursing home. She lives in a neighborhood where it's like, certain old people of a certain age, and they have a clubhouse. And my grandma does not knit. It was my dad's mom who taught me how to crochet. My grandma doesn't knit, but she said she's gonna take my nightbook sweater to the clubhouse and just show it off to the knitting group that they have there. And that's a little bit, no, she's proud of me. And I think she's also gonna like the fact that knitters are going to look at that and say, wow, your granddaughter made you a fingering weight color work sweater top. I didn't give it sleeves, but and think that she's very loved, and she is loved. So I just imagine that knitting circle, this non-knitter walking in and being like, look what I have. But let's move on to my works in progress. My first works in progress is a holdover from last time. It's the AVB Sweater. I didn't write down who it's by. I'll have it linked, of course. It's gorgeous. I think this is going to be my favorite project of the year, just so we're clear. It is a bottom-up sweater cable. I'm in the middle of a row. I'm so sorry. I am knitting this in Juniper Moon Farm Moonshine yarn in this beautiful electric blue that makes me want to I want to knit everything in electric blue now. But of course, I just, I'm not buying a bunch of electric blue yarn, but I think that's a gorgeous color. It's not even showing up perfectly, but it's a little bit more. Anyway, I love it. The big thing I need to talk about this time is I didn't talk about last time the cable charts, and so it's the front and the back repeat. It's a circular tube, and you put markers on either side, the front and the back repeat. So each the front and the back, you have 4 different cable charts, at least for my size. I'm knitting the second size so there's 4 different cable charts that you follow. And at first I had all the charts out, and I would mark off each one because like one chart has an 8-row repeat. This one is a 4-row repeat. And this one back here is a 6-row repeat. But now that I'm pretty deep into it, I've already split for the front and the back panels. You can see my split here. Now that I'm is this making sense? So it's pretty intuitive. So here we have the front side, and we have chart A, B, A, B, E, B, D. Does that make sense? So it's repeating, and D is a flip of A. So it's A, B, A, B, E, B, D, which is a flip of A. So it's at this point in what I'm making, it's very intuitive, and I do have to mark to know where I'm at. But I'm only marking on A, if that makes sense. And the back side is the exact same thing. I think there's different charts, like different combos of charts for different sizes, and it's pretty size inclusive, which is really nice. So I'm knitting the second size, which should be 54 inches, I think. I'll link it where there's all the information, and the designer had testers and of various size ranges. So there's more information out there. But the second size 2, I think there's only 4 sizes. It's working out really well for me, and I'm obsessed with this soft, gushy Juniper Moon Farm Moonshine yarn, which is a woolen spun yarn, which is not super common for me to work with. It's just wonderful. I forgot I was filming. It's interesting sitting here. First of all, I'm kind of excited because I get interrupted by my kids all the time. And so I'm sitting here having like basically a full conversation with myself, 3,400 people, but also myself. and no one's interrupting me. And it's almost like a trick in your brain. Like you don't know what to do. For the past 4.5 years, I have the monitor over there. I've been interrupted. The next work in progress I'm going to share with you is the Melange sweater by Petite Knit. Surprise, Petite Knit. I think I'm always going to have a Petite Knit pattern going on. Also because they make for men and children and babies. So this is the Melange sweater, and it is, I don't know if it's going well. The sweater, of course, is a breeze. Here's the back. And it's a cast on I hadn't done before, where you cast on and then you only cast on and you immediately divide your stitches and start doing your shoulder shaping off one side and then do the other. It worked out really well. There was apparently this whole section, and like she did a tutorial video about making sure you pick up your stitches. I don't know. Oh, it's also washing out really bad. There was no glitch in picking up my stitches. I didn't watch the tutorial. I just YOLO'd it and had no issue. So I think the pattern's going along really well. Here's the front side. Petite Knit is very fancy. I think of Petite Knit as like the high end of knitting patterns, right? She, I mean, if you're doing your photo shoots in front of a construction site, you're in beige clothing, you're kind of like the high end fashion, right? But when she released the Melange sweater, which means marl in Danish, I don't know. She wrote a caption about it. I read it a while back, but and marl means with these two colors combined. Which I'm using these two colors. Oh, that's prettier. This does not look as pretty on camera. Anyway, when I went out with my mom friends, and one of them was wearing a blue and tan marled sweater, and somebody else talked about it, and she got it at Walmart. No, so Petite Knit and Walmart. I mean, sure, Walmart has the money to be very on trend. So of course I thought I should make it too, because I had this yarn in my stash and I haven't done anything with it, because it's fingering weight, but it has the spinning oil on it. So it's not as processed as a yarn that you might get in a skein. It's got this oil on it. And I've never worked with yarn like this before. And I really, really wanted this to go well, because I love budget yarns. I love getting good deals on yarns, and that's why this is good. You'll find like this style of oily yarn in cones. I really want to be able to buy good yarn. I've looked at cones before, and I want that to be a thing, and that I do, because I knit big sizes. And cones come in 500 grams to a pound, and it just seems like such a great deal. This is not working out. I'm not going to name where I got it, because they did everything right. They shipped the product. The product is even better than the pictures. They shipped it quickly. It was a good value. The yarn has been perfectly fine. It's just not working out for me, because it's a stockinette stitch and it's hurting this finger. And I think it might be the yarn. As it's only happening when I work on this project and I sit here and I feed the yarn in. And so is it me? Or is this a common problem with people who work with the spinning yarn, that I think it's when I sit here and I feed it in. God, that looks terrible next to the gray. I wanted this to be my spring knit, but I think I'm gonna have to quit and try a different melange sweater. My husband and I were talking about doing my leftover gloss which is fingering weight, with just like a gray or a white, and making a melange sweater for him. It smells so rustic too. I don't like that I have to wash my hands after every time I knit, because a lot of times I sit there and I knit when I'm watching my kids play, and that means I have to be able to put down my knitting and do things, which is one of the reasons I can crank out something like the Eon Sweater really quick. But it also means that I'm not going to wash my hands every time I put my knitting down, and I'm not sitting there for really long sessions. So my acquisitions today isn't very bougie. It is the craft yarn by West Yorkshire. I don't know. I've never even been to the UK. Craft yarn by West Yorkshire Spinners, which if I understand the vibe correctly, I've heard about this yarn before, and I actually had been looking for Aran weight, but the DK weight was on sale. So I got this for $9.75 a skein, which is usually $16 US. I've heard it. So I went ahead and got the DK. I got 2 colors, and I think this is like the reputation that I think this has is that it's a good, decent yarn, British yarn. It's not high end, but it's not, they talk about where their yarn comes from and supporting Campaign for Wool, and the history of British spinning, like they care about those things. They're caring about where the product comes from, but it's not a high-end yarn. And so I thought that'd be cool to give it a go. That seems like my vibe. I got, this is, oh, that looks pretty. How can this look so pretty? But then when I show you this, it looks like, I can't think of any polite words. That looks pretty. It's a little more pumpkin-y in person, but the way the light hits that is just, I love it. And then this is Chalister. Oh, I'm off my notes now. Chalister and Sandvo. This one, my husband wanted a orange cable knit sweater. So this is my fall goal. And this is, I want this to be the main color in a halibut. And I don't have my contrast color yet. I almost pulled the trigger on a indie dyed DK weight yarn the other day, and then I got really nervous about whether or not it would the color bleeding. But yeah, I'm actually really excited to work with this. It's 100% Shetland. All right, well, that was an awkward transition. My phone decided that the storage was full, and I don't have time to film again. I think that was, just, you can deal with the awkward ending there. So thank you for spending your time with me. I hope that I produced content that you found mildly interesting, and that I get to see you back here again. And I hope you have a really great day.